Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Carved in Stone. Vincent Thorne stood at the window of his home office, watching the sunset cast golden light across the sprawling estate he'd built from nothing. At 42, he had the kind of success most men only dreamed of. Thorne's security systems had revolutionized home protection across 3 states, making him wealthy beyond his humble beginnings in rural Pennsylvania. He checked his watch, a Patek Philippe his grandfather had given him before passing, and realized he needed to start getting ready. Tonight was his 10th anniversary with Melissa. 10 years of building a life together, of planning and dreaming, of sacrifice. "You need anything else before I head out, Mr. Thorne?" asked Preston, his assistant of 7 years. Vincent turned, offering a rare smile. "No, I'm good. You should get home to Diane and the kids. Big night tonight. 10 years is something to celebrate," Preston said, gathering his tablet and notes. "Mrs. Thorne's been working on something special, I hear." "Has she?" "She's been secretive lately." Vincent loosened his tie. "She insisted on planning everything this year. Usually, I'm the one who handles anniversaries." Preston nodded. "Well, enjoy. See you Monday." After Preston left, Vincent opened his desk drawer and removed a small velvet box. Inside was a custom-designed diamond necklace with a pendant shaped like the North Star, a reminder of their first date when they'd lain on a blanket watching stars after a concert. Melissa had pointed to the North Star, saying it reminded her of Vincent, her constant in a chaotic world. As he showered and dressed, memories surfaced. Meeting Melissa at a charity gala 12 years ago, her laugh that had cut through the pretentious atmosphere, the way she'd challenged his cynical worldview. Back then, he'd been ruthless in business but still believed in second chances. Melissa had been different from the socialites who usually orbited him. She taught art at an inner-city school, passionate about giving underprivileged kids creative outlets. Vincent had grown up poor in a steel town where his father worked 60-hour weeks until a workplace accident left him disabled. His mother cleaned houses to make ends meet. Vincent clawed his way through college on scholarships and part-time jobs, then built his security business from a small storefront operation to a regional powerhouse. He understood the value of every dollar earned and despised waste, betrayal, and disloyalty above all else. The doorbell rang as Vincent adjusted his cufflinks. It was Melissa's cousin Abigail, arriving to house sit. "Hey, Vincent. Melissa asked me to watch the place tonight. Said you guys might be staying in the city after dinner." Vincent frowned slightly. "Did she? News to me." Abigail's smile faltered. "Oh, maybe it's a surprise." "Probably," Vincent said, though something cold settled in his stomach. "Melissa already left. Said she needed to check on some details at the restaurant." "That sounds like her. Always the perfectionist," Abigail said, already making herself comfortable on the couch. On the drive to Aurelia, the 5-star restaurant where they'd had their first official date, Vincent replayed recent months in his mind. Melissa had seemed distant, spending more evenings at art department functions and gallery openings. Their conversations had grown perfunctory. The last time they'd made love was nearly 2 months ago, and it had felt mechanical. He'd attributed it to her recent promotion to department head at Westlake Academy, the prestigious private school where she now taught. The position came with more responsibility, more networking events. Vincent had been supportive, knowing how much her career meant to her. He arrived at Aurelia 15 minutes early. The maitre d' informed him that Mrs. Thorne was already there, speaking with the manager. Vincent nodded, about to follow when he heard Melissa's voice from around the corner. "My husband thinks this is an anniversary dinner," she was saying, her voice low but clear. "It's actually where I'll tell him I want a divorce." Vincent froze, blood turning to ice in his veins. "Of course, Mrs. Thorne," the manager replied. "We've arranged the private dining room, as requested. The cake has been delivered as well." "Perfect," Melissa said. "Once this is over, I can finally start my new life." Vincent stepped back into the shadows as Melissa and the manager walked past. Through the doorway to the private room, he glimpsed a cake on the table. Instead of "Happy Anniversary," it read "Goodbye Forever" in elegant script. His hand closed around the velvet box in his pocket, knuckles white. Chapter 2. The Breaking Point. Vincent's mind raced as he slipped into the restroom to collect himself. 10 years of marriage, ending not with a discussion but a public ambush. He splashed cold water on his face and stared at his reflection. His grandfather's voice echoed in his memory. "A thorn doesn't show weakness." When someone tries to cut you down, you make sure they never get another chance. He straightened his tie and made a decision. Vincent Thorne wouldn't be blindsided. He wouldn't be made a fool. Taking a deep breath, he walked to the private dining room. Melissa looked up, her practiced smile faltering slightly when she saw his expression. "Vincent, you're early," she said, standing to kiss his cheek. She wore a new dress he'd never seen, her honey blonde hair styled elegantly. "I wanted everything to be perfect when you arrived." Vincent gestured to the cake. Interesting choice of dessert. Color drained from Melissa's face. That wasn't supposed to be brought out yet. Clearly. He pulled out his chair and sat down. "Why don't we skip the charade and get to the part where you tell me you want a divorce?" Melissa's carefully constructed facade crumbled. She sank into her seat. "How did you? Does it matter?" Vincent interrupted. "What matters is that after 10 years, you planned to ambush me in public rather than having the decency to discuss this privately." "I didn't think you'd listen if I tried to talk about it at home," she said, voice small. "So public humiliation seemed like the better option?" He maintained perfect control, his voice never rising. "Who is he?" Melissa's eyes widened. "What? Please. I wasn't born yesterday. The late nights, the new clothes, the sudden work events. Who is he?" She twisted her wedding ring. "Dominic Russo. He's the new head of visual arts at Westlake's Collegiate Division." "And how long?" 7 months, she whispered. 7 months. Nearly a third of a year living a lie. Sleeping beside him while planning her escape. Vincent felt something fundamental shift inside him. The last remnant of the man who believed in second chances withering away. "Does he make you happy?" Vincent asked, surprising even himself with the question. Melissa looked up, tears streaking her makeup. "Yes. He understands me in ways you never tried to." Vincent nodded once, processing. "I see. Vincent, we've been growing apart for years. You're always working, always focused on the business. When was the last time you asked about my art, my passions? Dominic sees me, really sees me. And what does Dominic do when he's not seeing you? What does he bring to the table besides validation?" Vincent asked, his tone clinical. Melissa bristled. "He's a brilliant artist and educator. He's exhibited in galleries across the country. And financially? Not everything is about money, Vincent. That's always been your problem." Vincent laughed coldly. "Says the woman who's enjoyed the fruits of my labor for a decade. The house, the cars, the vacations, your studio with top-of-the-line equipment. I never asked for those things." "No, but you certainly never refused them." Vincent leaned forward. "Tell me, does Dominic know you're planning to divorce me tonight? Is he waiting somewhere to celebrate afterward?" Melissa's silence was answer enough. "I thought so." Vincent stood, buttoning his jacket. "You'll be hearing from my attorney. Until then, I suggest you find somewhere else to stay." Melissa grabbed his arm. "Vincent, wait. We need to discuss." "There's nothing to discuss. You made your choice 7 months ago." He removed her hand from his arm. "Enjoy your cake." As Vincent turned to leave, Melissa called after him. "What happened to you? The Vincent I married would never be this cold." He paused at the doorway. "He died tonight. You killed him." Outside in the cool evening air, Vincent called his driver, then opened his contacts and scrolled to a name he hadn't called in years. Maxwell Pike, an old acquaintance with unique skills and information gathering. Vincent had helped him avoid criminal charges years ago in exchange for occasional services. Tonight, he would call in that debt. As his car arrived, Vincent looked back at the restaurant one last time. A waiter was escorting Melissa out a side entrance where a red Alfa Romeo waited. A man with artfully disheveled dark hair, Dominic, presumably, embraced her. Vincent watched them drive away, his expression unreadable. "Where to, sir?" his driver asked. "The Westford Hotel downtown," Vincent replied. "And then I need you to make a stop at our downtown office. I'll be working late tonight." As the city lights blurred past, Vincent removed the velvet box from his pocket and opened it one last time. The diamond North Star glittered under the car's interior lights. With deliberate movements, he closed the box and dropped it into a trash can as they stopped at a red light. The North Star had fallen. Now there was only darkness ahead, and in that darkness, Vincent would become something new, something merciless. Chapter 3: The Architect of Vengeance. The Westford Hotel suite became Vincent's temporary home and the headquarters for what he now thought of as Operation Severance. 3 days after the restaurant incident, Maxwell Pike sat across from him, sliding a thick folder across the glass coffee table. Everything you asked for, Maxwell said. Phone records, credit card statements, emails, social media. Dominic Russo isn't as careful as he thinks. Vincent skimmed through the contents. And the background. That's where it gets interesting. Maxwell leaned forward. Russo isn't just an artist and teacher. He's got a pattern, 3 different schools in 7 years, always leaving after getting involved with wealthy, married women. Vincent's eyes narrowed. A predator with a type. Exactly. And here's the best part. He doesn't just leave with a broken heart. The last 2 women divorced their husbands, got substantial settlements, and then, surprise, Dominic vanished with a good chunk of their money within a year. So Melissa isn't special. She's just the next target. Vincent felt no satisfaction in this confirmation, only cold determination. There's more. He's got gambling debts, big ones. Casino loans, underground poker games. He owes nearly $200,000 to people you don't want to owe money to. Vincent studied a surveillance photo of Dominic and Melissa entering a boutique hotel, his arm possessively around her waist. How much does Melissa know? From what I can tell, nothing. He's played the starving artist role perfectly with her. Claims he stays in a small apartment because he values experiences over possessions. In reality, he can't afford better because of his debts. Vincent stood, walking to the window overlooking the city. What about her family? Friends? Her parents still live in Michigan. One sister in Chicago, the cousin you mentioned who's been house-sitting. Few close friends. She's been distancing herself from your mutual social circle for months. Typical of fair behavior. And legally, if we move forward with this plan, Maxwell hesitated. It's in a gray area. Nothing overtly illegal if we're careful, but definitely not something you'd want scrutinized too closely. Vincent turned, his expression resolute. I want to be crystal clear, Maxwell. I'm not looking to reconcile. I'm not looking for justice. What I want is for both of them to experience complete destruction, financial, social, emotional. That's extreme, even for you, Vincent. Is it? She planned to humiliate me on what should have been a celebration of our decade together. Now I find out she's fallen for a con man who would have bled her dry after taking whatever he could get from our divorce settlement. Vincent's voice remained eerily calm. They deserve each other. And they deserve what's coming. Maxwell studied his old friend. The Vincent I knew had lines he wouldn't cross. The Vincent you knew died at Aurelia 3 nights ago. He returned to the table, opening his laptop. I need 3 things. First, documentation of all Russo's debts and previous relationships. Second, I need to speak with his former conquests, particularly any who might be willing to help us. Third, I need access to the Westlake Academy systems, donor lists, staff communications, everything. Maxwell raised an eyebrow. Planning to get him fired? That's rather tame. Vincent smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Getting him fired is just the appetizer. I'm planning a 3-course meal. Over the next week, Vincent barely slept. His company ran on autopilot while he orchestrated his revenge. He called in favors, liquidated investments, and assembled a team of specialists, all operating with the precision and secrecy that had made Thorne Security Systems an industry leader. Meanwhile, Melissa had moved in with Dominic at his modest apartment, trading their 6,000-square-foot home for a 900-square-foot one-bedroom. Vincent's attorney had frozen their joint accounts pending divorce proceedings, leaving Melissa with only her teacher's salary. According to Maxwell's surveillance, the honeymoon phase was already showing cracks under financial pressure. On day 9, Vincent received a call from Candace Morello, Dominic's previous conquest from Boston. After verifying her identity, Vincent explained part of his situation. So your husband number 3, Candace said, her voice bitter even through the phone. He's nothing if not consistent. I'd like to meet. What I'm planning could benefit us both. I lost everything because of him, Candace replied. My marriage, my reputation, most of my money. What could you possibly offer me? The one thing you haven't had yet, Vincent said. Revenge. There was a long pause. I'm listening. I'll send a private jet. Be ready tomorrow morning. As Vincent ended the call, his phone lit up with Melissa's number, her 5th attempt to reach him since that night. This time, instead of ignoring it, he answered. Vincent. Finally. We need to talk about. About what? The divorce? The division of assets? Or perhaps about how your new boyfriend is a serial con man who's targeted wealthy married women at every school he's worked at. The silence on the other end was deafening. That's That's not true, Melissa finally managed. Isn't it? Ask him about Candace Morello in Boston. Or Elizabeth Winters in Chicago. Both divorced their husbands for him. Both were left financially ruined within a year. You're just trying to hurt me, Melissa whispered. No, Melissa. I'm trying to warn you. But you won't listen, because you never do. So instead, I'll simply say this. You made your choice, and now you'll live with the consequences. Vincent ended the call and turned to find Preston standing in the doorway of the hotel suite, concern etched on his features. Sir, the board is asking questions. They need you at tomorrow's quarterly meeting. Vincent nodded. I'll be there. And Preston, clear my schedule for the following week. We're about to launch a new project. What should I tell them it's called? Vincent looked at the surveillance photos spread across the table, Melissa and Dominic, blissfully unaware of what was coming. Call it Project Severance. Chapter 4, The Gathering Storm. 2 weeks after the anniversary debacle, Vincent sat at the head of an elegant conference table in his downtown office. Around him were the key players in what he now termed the dissolution. Maxwell Pike handled intelligence. Candace Morello represented Dominic's past victims. Harriet Vance, Vincent's ruthless attorney, managed legal strategy, and newly recruited Tessa Loran, Westlake Academy's assistant financial director who'd been passed over for promotion in favor of Dominic's friend. Let's review what we know, Vincent said, adjusting his cufflinks, a habit from his negotiation days. Dominic Russo has debts exceeding $200,000 to various unsavory characters. He's pulled this con at least twice before, targeting wealthy married women, encouraging divorce, then vanishing with their assets within a year. Candace nodded, her eyes hard. He's methodical. He researches his targets, discovers their emotional vulnerabilities, then positions himself as the perfect antidote to whatever's missing in their marriage. With me, he claimed to be independently wealthy from family money but chose to teach to give back, she continued. In reality, he needed my divorce settlement to cover gambling debts. Once he'd drained my accounts, he disappeared overnight. By the time I realized what happened, he'd already started over in Chicago with Elizabeth. Vincent turned to Tessa. And at Westlake, the petite financial director adjusted her glasses. His personnel file shows he misrepresented his exhibition history on his resume. 3 of the galleries he claimed to feature his work don't exist. He was hired largely because of Headmaster Phillips' friendship with him. They were college roommates. Perfect, Vincent said. And how are our other arrangements proceeding? Maxwell cleared his throat. We've located Elizabeth Winters. She's remarried and initially reluctant to get involved. But when I mentioned Dominic's ongoing pattern, she agreed to provide documentation of his financial manipulation. And the casino debts? Vincent asked. I've arranged to purchase them, Harriet said, consulting her tablet. Once the paperwork clears, you'll effectively own his debt. We can call it due at any time. Vincent nodded, satisfied. Now for phase 2. Tessa, what have you found about Westlake's finances? Tessa slid a folder across the table. The art department under Dominic's leadership has shown irregular accounting. Nothing definitive yet, but there are discrepancies between ordered supplies and delivered items. My guess is he's skimming, having the school pay for materials that never arrive or arrive in smaller quantities. Excellent. Document everything, but take no action yet. Vincent turned to Candace. Are you prepared for tomorrow? The elegant woman nodded. I've composed a detailed letter to the Westlake Board of Trustees outlining my experience with Dominic, with documentation of his financial manipulation. Elizabeth has provided a similar statement. We've been careful to frame it as concern for the school's reputation rather than personal vendetta. And I've prepared cease and desist letters regarding the unauthorized use of my security system designs, Vincent added. This had been an unexpected discovery. Dominic had apparently accessed Vincent's home office during visits and photographed proprietary security designs, which he'd then attempted to sell to a competitor under the guise of artistic concepts. One question, Maxwell interrupted. What about Melissa in all this? Is she collateral damage or a target? The room fell silent as everyone turned to Vincent. His expression remained impassive. Melissa made her choice, he said finally. She chose to believe his lies over our 10 years together. She chose to humiliate me rather than end things honestly. She'll face the natural consequences of those choices. And if she tries to come back once she realizes the truth? Harriet asked. Vincent's laugh was devoid of humor. She won't have that option. As the meeting concluded, Preston entered with an envelope. This just arrived for you, sir. Hand-delivered. Inside was a formal invitation to a Westlake Academy fundraising gala the following month. A handwritten note in Melissa's familiar script was attached. Vincent, I know things ended badly between us, but your continued support of Westlake would mean a great deal. The students shouldn't suffer because of our personal situation. Please consider attending. M. Vincent showed the invitation to the others. It seems we've been given an opportunity. The gala will be our endgame. That's cutting it close, Harriet cautioned. The divorce proceedings will be delayed through your expert legal maneuvering, Vincent finished for her. I want everything to culminate on that night. Poetic justice. That evening, as his team dispersed to execute their various assignments, Vincent drove to his and Melissa's home for the first time since the anniversary. Using his key, he entered silently. Abigail was gone. Melissa had apparently released her from house-sitting duties. The house felt cavernous and empty. In the master bedroom, he noted Melissa had taken some clothes but left many belongings, clearly expecting to return for them later. In her studio, her most personal works remained, including the portrait she'd painted of him for their 5th anniversary. Vincent studied the painting. In it, he looked younger, more vulnerable, a man still capable of forgiveness. That man was gone now. He went to his office and opened the safe behind a landscape painting. Inside was a second set of documents, evidence he'd gathered years ago but never used, proof that Melissa's rise to department head had involved manipulation and underhanded tactics against the previous head. Vincent had discovered this accidentally but kept it to himself, believing Melissa deserved her success regardless of methods. Now, this too would become ammunition. As he was replacing the safe's contents, his phone rang. The caller ID showed Dominic Russo. Mr. Thorne. Dominic's voice was smooth, practiced. I think it's time we spoke man to man. Do we have anything to discuss? Vincent kept his tone neutral. I believe we do. About Melissa, about the divorce proceedings, about moving forward amicably. Interesting choice of words. Amicably isn't how I describe having an affair with my wife for 7 months. Dominic sighed dramatically. The heart wants what it wants, Vincent. May I call you Vincent? Melissa didn't plan for this to happen. Neither did I. And yet here we are. Vincent moved to the window, watching storm clouds gather on the horizon. What exactly do you want, Mr. Russo? I thought perhaps we could discuss an accelerated divorce settlement. Something fair to all parties that would avoid drawn-out legal battles. By fair, I assume you mean generous to Melissa, which by extension means generous to you. A pause. That's rather cynical. Is it? Let me be clear, Mr. Russo. You don't know me. You don't know what I'm capable of. But you will. Vincent ended the call and continued gathering what he needed from the house. As he left, he activated a specialized security protocol on his phone, one that would allow him to monitor the house remotely while preventing anyone else from disarming the system without his knowledge. The pieces were moving into place. The storm was gathering. Soon, it would break. Chapter 5, False Horizons. The Westlake Academy Board of Trustees emergency meeting was called to order at 9 a.m. sharp. Vincent watched the proceedings via a secure video feed from Tessa's laptop, positioned discreetly at the back of the boardroom. Headmaster Phillips looked visibly shaken as he addressed the assembled board members. I've called this meeting to address serious allegations that have been brought against our head of visual arts, Dominic Russo. We've received documented complaints from 2 former colleagues at his previous institutions. The board members exchanged concerned glances as copies of Candace and Elizabeth's statements were distributed. Additionally, Phillips continued, our assistant financial director has identified accounting irregularities within the visual arts department that require investigation. Vincent smiled thinly as he watched Dominic being summoned to the room. The art teacher entered confidently, but his expression faltered when he saw Tessa among the board members. For the next hour, Dominic attempted to deflect the allegations, dismissing them as jealous former colleagues and accounting misunderstandings. But the evidence was too substantial, the pattern too clear. In light of these concerns, Phillips finally said, the board has decided to place you on administrative leave pending a full investigation. Dominic's facade cracked. This is absurd. I've increased department donations by 30%. I've put Westlake's art program on the map. Nevertheless, we must follow protocol, Phillips replied, not meeting his friend's eyes. Please clear your office by the end of the day. Security will assist you. As Dominic stormed out, Vincent terminated the video feed. Phase 1 was complete. Dominic's professional reputation was compromised. Now for Phase 2. Later that afternoon, Vincent received confirmation that his attorney had completed the purchase of Dominic's gambling debts. That evening, Dominic would receive notice that the debts had been called due, payment required within 30 days. Meanwhile, Melissa had begun to experience her own professional difficulties. Anonymous tips to school administration had raised questions about her methods in securing her department head position. While not enough to warrant dismissal, the scrutiny had placed her under a microscope, every decision questioned, every request delayed. Vincent monitored these developments from his hotel suite while maintaining the appearance of being focused solely on his business. To the outside world, he was simply a wronged husband proceeding with divorce while immersing himself in work, a common enough coping mechanism to avoid suspicion. 3 days after Dominic's suspension, Vincent's phone rang with Melissa's number. "What have you done?" she demanded without preamble. "You'll need to be more specific," Vincent replied calmly. "Dominic's been suspended. His apartment was broken into. Now some loan shark is demanding immediate payment of gambling debts he claims don't exist." Her voice cracked. "This has you written all over it. That's quite an accusation. Do you have evidence? Or is this just your guilty conscience creating connections?" "Vincent, please. Whatever you're doing, stop. This isn't like you. You lost the right to tell me what I'm like when you decided to end our marriage at an anniversary dinner." He kept his voice measured. "As for Dominic's problems, perhaps you should ask him about Candace Morello and Elizabeth Winters. Ask him where your department's art supplies have really been going. Ask him about the designs he stole from my office." Silence stretched between them. Then, barely audible, "What are you talking about?" "Do your research, Melissa." "I did mine." After ending the call, Vincent reviewed Maxwell's latest surveillance report. As predicted, cracks were showing in Melissa and Dominic's relationship. Financial strain, professional setbacks, and now the seeds of doubt Vincent had planted were taking their toll. The next phase required careful timing. Vincent arranged a seemingly chance encounter with Headmaster Phillips at the city's exclusive Commonwealth Club, where both were members. "Vincent," Phillips greeted him awkwardly. "I wasn't expecting to see you here. Just needed to get out of the office," Vincent replied, signaling the bartender for 2 drinks. "Difficult times." Phillips accepted the offered scotch. "Yes, I heard about you and Melissa. I'm sorry. These things happen." Vincent's casual tone put Phillips visibly at ease. "Actually, I'm glad I ran into you. Despite everything, I still believe in Westlake's mission. I plan to attend the gala next month." Phillips brightened. "That's surprisingly generous of you. The school shouldn't suffer because of personal matters." In fact, Vincent leaned in conspiratorially. "I'm considering a substantial donation to the visual arts program. Perhaps you could arrange for me to review the department's current initiatives? Purely for due diligence." "Of course. That would be, given the circumstances with Russo, we could certainly use the support." Phillips was practically salivating at the prospect of a major donation during this crisis. Vincent smiled. "Excellent. Have your office send the files to mine. And Richard? I'd appreciate your discretion regarding my continued involvement. No need to mention it to Melissa just yet. I'd like the donation to be a surprise at the gala." Of course. Mum's the word." As Phillips hurried off to make arrangements, Vincent sipped his drink, satisfaction warming him more than the alcohol. Access to departmental files would provide the final pieces needed for his plan. 2 days later, Preston delivered the requested files to Vincent's hotel suite. Among them was the smoking gun, documentation of how Dominic had been systematically embezzling from the school by inflating supply orders and pocketing the difference. More damning were emails between Dominic and Melissa discussing the scheme, with Melissa initially expressing concern before eventually becoming complicit. "This is better than I hoped," Vincent murmured, photographing the evidence before returning the files. This would be his insurance policy, leverage to ensure Melissa could never rebuild her career at Westlake or any reputable institution. As the gala approached, Vincent orchestrated the final movements of his symphony of revenge. He arranged for Candace and Elizabeth to attend as his guests. He ensured Dominic's gambling debt collectors would make an appearance. And most importantly, He prepared a presentation that would leave no doubt about who had orchestrated this downfall. The night before the gala, Vincent visited his long-neglected home one last time. In Melissa's studio, he placed the documents he'd gathered in a portfolio marked, "For Melissa," opened before the gala. On top was a handwritten note. "You wanted freedom. Here's your chance to walk away before tomorrow night. This is your only warning." As he left, Vincent activated a special security protocol, one that would allow Melissa entry but would record her every move and word once inside. He wanted to witness her reaction when she discovered just how thoroughly he had dismantled her future. Chapter 6. The Gathering Darkness. The morning of the gala arrived with unexpected complications. Vincent received an urgent call from Maxwell. "We have a problem," Maxwell said without preamble. "Dominic's caught on. He's trying to liquidate what little assets he has and was seen purchasing plane tickets to Buenos Aires." Vincent frowned. "When flight leaves tomorrow morning. He's planning to skip town right after the gala. And Melissa? That's the other issue. She found your portfolio. Security footage shows her entering the house last night, finding the documents, then making a series of frantic calls. She contacted her lawyer, then Dominic, who denied everything. They had a screaming match before she left." Vincent processed this information. Is she still planning to attend the gala? According to her last call with the headmaster, yes. She claims she needs to set things right. Interesting. Vincent straightened his tie, studying his reflection in the hotel mirror. Maintain surveillance. I want to know every move they make before tonight. Vincent spent the day in final preparations, meeting briefly with Candace and Elizabeth to review their roles in the evening's events. By late afternoon, all was in place for what he now thought of as the final act. As he dressed for the gala in an impeccably tailored black suit, Vincent reflected on the past month. He had changed, become something colder, more calculating than he'd ever been in business. The Vincent who had built Thorn Security had been ruthless but fair. This new Vincent operated without such constraints. His phone chimed with a text from Melissa. "We need to talk before tonight. Please." Vincent didn't respond. Whatever desperation had driven her to reach out would only intensify his satisfaction when the night was through. The Westlake Academy Spring Gala was held at the Gardner Museum, its Renaissance courtyard transformed into an elegant reception area. Vincent arrived fashionably late, drawing curious glances and whispered comments as he moved through the crowd of benefactors and faculty. Headmaster Phillips intercepted him, champagne flutes in hand. "Vincent, wonderful to see you. I've arranged everything as discussed." "Excellent. And the presentation slot?" "Right after dinner, before the donation announcements." "Are you sure you wouldn't prefer to present your gift then as well?" Vincent smiled thinly. "I have something rather special planned. Trust me, Richard, it will be memorable." Across the room, Vincent spotted Melissa in animated conversation with a board member. She wore a midnight blue gown he'd never seen before, her hair swept up elegantly. Despite everything, he felt a momentary pang, not of regret or longing, but of something adjacent to grief for what might have been with a different woman, a different life. The moment passed when Dominic appeared at Melissa's side, handsome in a rented tuxedo, his practiced charm evident even from a distance. Vincent noted the tension between them, the slightly too rigid posture, the minimal eye contact. The fissures were widening. As dinner commenced, Vincent was seated at the headmaster's table, a position of honor that raised eyebrows given his pending divorce from a faculty member. Melissa and Dominic were placed at a distant table, though Vincent could feel Melissa's gaze repeatedly finding him throughout the meal. After the main course, Dominic excused himself. Vincent nodded subtly to Maxwell, who followed discreetly. Minutes later, Vincent's phone vibrated with a text. He's on a call with the airline, confirming his flight. Also contacted someone about emergency cash. Returning now. Perfect. All pieces were in motion. As coffee was served, Phillips approached the podium. "Before we move to our donation announcements, we have a special presentation from one of Westlake's most valued supporters. Despite recent personal challenges, he has remained committed to our institution's excellence. Please welcome Vincent Thorn." Polite applause followed Vincent to the stage. He adjusted the microphone, surveying the room with the confidence of a man who had orchestrated every detail of what was to come. "Thank you, Headmaster Phillips. Distinguished guests, faculty, and friends of Westlake. I stand before you at an unusual juncture. both personally and professionally. Vincent paused, letting his gaze find Melissa, who had gone pale. Many of you know that my wife, Melissa Thorne, and I are currently separated. What you may not know is the circumstance of that separation, which occurred on what should have been our 10th anniversary celebration. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This was not the standard donor speech they had expected. Normally, I would keep such matters private. However, when personal betrayal intersects with professional misconduct that affects this institution, silence becomes complicity. Vincent gestured, and the lights dimmed as a screen descended behind him. What I'm about to share concerns not just my marriage, but the integrity of Westlake Academy itself. The first slide appeared, financial records highlighting discrepancies in the visual arts department's expenditures. Vincent methodically walked the audience through evidence of embezzlement, naming Dominic Russo as the primary architect, but also implicating Melissa as a knowing accomplice. Gasps and whispers filled the room. At her table, Melissa had risen halfway from her seat, her expression a mask of horror. Dominic was nowhere to be seen. Beyond financial impropriety, Vincent continued, Mr. Russo has engaged in a pattern of behavior that should disqualify him from any position of influence over students. The next slides detailed Dominic's history at previous institutions, the relationships with married women, the financial manipulation, the abrupt departures. Candace and Elizabeth stood at strategic points in the room, their presence confirming the allegations without a word being spoken. And finally, Vincent said, his voice dropping to ensure everyone leaned forward to listen, there is the matter of industrial espionage. He revealed evidence of Dominic photographing proprietary security designs from Vincent's home office, followed by emails attempting to sell the concepts to Vincent's competitors. I present these facts not out of vindictiveness, but out of concern for an institution I have long supported. The students and faculty of Westlake deserve better than leadership that views this academy as a hunting ground for personal gain. As Vincent concluded his presentation, the room had fallen into stunned silence. Then, from the back, a commotion, Dominic attempting to leave, only to be confronted by two men in suits, representatives of his gambling creditors, right on schedule. Mr. Russo, one called loudly enough for all to hear. We need to discuss the immediate payment of your outstanding debts. All $200,000 of them. The room erupted. Board members huddled in urgent consultation. Faculty members watched in shock as security escorted Dominic from the building. And Melissa stood alone, abandoned by her lover, exposed before her colleagues, her professional reputation in tatters. Vincent stepped from the podium, nodding politely to shocked attendees as he made his way toward the exit. As he passed Melissa, she grabbed his arm. How could you? She whispered, tears streaming down her face. Everything we had was a lie, Vincent finished for her. You ended it with a cake that said goodbye forever. Consider this my response. I made a mistake, she pleaded. I see that now. We could still. Vincent removed her hand from his arm. No, Melissa. We couldn't. You chose your path. Now live with it. As Vincent walked away, Headmaster Phillips hurried after him. Vincent, I don't know what to say. This is unprecedented. What you should say, Richard, is that you'll implement proper financial controls and vetting procedures for your staff. Vincent's tone was businesslike. As for my donation, I've decided to redirect it to student scholarships rather than departmental funding. My attorney will be in touch with details. Outside in the cool night air, Vincent felt no triumph, no vindication, only a cold satisfaction that justice, as he defined it, had been served. He had promised consequences, and he had delivered them. Maxwell joined him at the bottom of the museum steps. Quite a performance. What now? Vincent straightened his cufflinks. Now we conclude the final act. Is everything in place for tomorrow? Yes. Dominic won't make his flight. His creditors will ensure that. As for Melissa, Vincent said, her future is no longer my concern. The divorce will proceed as planned. She'll receive exactly what the prenuptial agreement stipulates. Nothing more, nothing less. As they walked to the waiting car, Vincent glanced back once at the museum. Through the windows, he could see the chaos still unfolding inside. His handiwork, his revenge. It hadn't healed what was broken inside him, hadn't filled the void that had opened that night at Aurelia. But it had served its purpose. The Vincent Thorne who had valued loyalty above all else, who had built a life and marriage on trust, was truly gone. In his place stood this new creation, a man who would never again be vulnerable, never again be betrayed. And in the darkness of the car as it pulled away from the museum, that seemed like victory enough. Chapter 7. The Aftermath. 1 month after the Westlake Gala, Vincent sat in his attorney's office, signing the final divorce papers. Harriet Vance watched with professional detachment as he initialed each page without hesitation. "That concludes it," she said, gathering the documents. "Once filed, your marriage will be legally dissolved. Melissa receives the settlement outlined in the prenuptial agreement. Essentially, what she brought into the marriage plus the agreed-upon annual stipend for each year of marriage." "And she's accepted these terms?" Vincent asked, though he already knew the answer. She had no choice. The evidence of her complicity in the Westlake embezzlement scheme gave us significant leverage. She knows that contesting the prenup would result in criminal charges. Vincent nodded, capping his pen. "And Russo?" Harriet's lips curved in a rare smile. "Currently working as a barista in Seattle under a different name. His creditors eventually accepted a structured payment plan after recovering what little assets he had. His teaching career is finished. The American Association of Art Educators has blacklisted him based on the evidence we provided." "And Melissa's career?" "She resigned from Westlake the day after the gala. No formal charges were filed, but she's effectively unemployable in any prestigious institution. Last I heard, she's teaching children's art classes at a community center in Connecticut." Vincent absorbed this information without visible reaction. Good. That chapter is closed. As he left the law offices, Vincent checked his phone to find 3 missed calls from Preston. He returned the call immediately. "Sir, we have a situation at the Rochester project," Preston said without preamble. "The contractor is threatening to walk unless we increase the budget by 15%. Tell him if he walks, he'll never work in this state again," Vincent replied coldly. "Then call Meridian Construction. They've been wanting our business for years. Have them ready to step in within 24 hours. "That's aggressive," Preston said cautiously. "Rochester is a major client, which is precisely why we can't show weakness. The moment you bend to unreasonable demands, you invite more of the same." The new Vincent, the post-Melissa Vincent, had brought this uncompromising approach to every aspect of his business. In the months since the gala, Thorne Security had become known for ruthless efficiency. Underperforming employees were terminated without second chances. Clients who delayed payments found their service contracts canceled without negotiation. Competitors who attempted to poach Thorne clients encountered unexpectedly aggressive countermeasures. The result was a company that ran with machine-like precision but had lost the loyalty-based culture Vincent had once prided himself on. Employees now feared him rather than respected him, a distinction Vincent no longer cared about as long as results followed. That evening, Vincent returned to the estate he had once shared with Melissa. After the divorce filing, he had hired designers to completely renovate the interior, erasing all traces of Melissa's taste and presence. What had once been warm and inviting was now sleek, modern, and impersonal, more like an upscale hotel than a home. As he poured himself a scotch in the redesigned kitchen, his phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Vincent Thorne," he answered crisply. "Mr. Thorne, this is Dr. Eleanor Vega from Lakeside Medical Center. I'm calling about Abigail Foster." Vincent frowned. "Abigail, Melissa's cousin who had house sat during that fateful anniversary night. What about her?" "You're listed as her emergency contact. She's been admitted following a severe allergic reaction. She's stable now, but heavily sedated." Vincent was momentarily confused. "I'm not family. Her cousin. Miss Foster specifically requested we not contact Melissa Thorne. She insisted we call you instead." Something about this triggered Vincent's suspicion. "I'll be there shortly." At the hospital, Vincent found Abigail in a private room, hooked to various monitors. She looked smaller somehow, vulnerable in the hospital gown. Her eyes fluttered open as he approached. "Vincent, you came. You listed me as your emergency contact," he replied, remaining at the foot of the bed. "Why?" Abigail struggled to sit up. "Because I need to tell you something, and I was afraid to before. But after what happened to Melissa, I can't stay silent anymore." Vincent's expression remained neutral. "I'm listening." "That night, your anniversary. Melissa asked me to house sit because she said you two might stay in the city overnight. But that wasn't true. Abigail's voice trembled. She had already packed a suitcase. It was hidden in her studio. She was planning to leave you that night, regardless of how the dinner went. Vincent absorbed this without visible reaction, though internally something twisted painfully. Not only had Melissa planned to humiliate him with a public divorce announcement, but she'd never intended to return home at all. "Why tell me this now?" he asked. Tears welled in Abigail's eyes. "Because what you did to them. It was terrible, but I understand it now. Dominic used me too, last year. Just a brief fling, but I think I was his practice run before targeting Melissa. When I saw them together at a faculty event, he pretended not to know me." Vincent's mind rapidly recalibrated with this new information. "So you knew about their affair before the anniversary?" Abigail nodded miserably. "I tried to warn her about him, but she accused me of jealousy. Said I couldn't stand to see her happy." She reached for Vincent's hand. "I should have told you. Maybe if you'd known sooner." "It wouldn't have changed anything," Vincent interrupted, withdrawing his hand. Melissa made her choice long before that night. As he left the hospital, Vincent felt a strange emptiness. The revelation should have fueled his anger, validated his revenge. Instead, it left him hollow. The game was over, the players scattered. His perfect retribution had been executed flawlessly, yet here he was, alone in the aftermath, with nothing but a company built on fear and a house that no longer felt like home. For the first time since that night at Aurelia, Vincent allowed himself to wonder if his response had been proportional to the offense. Not out of regret for Melissa and Dominic's fate, but from recognition of what his vengeance had cost him. The thought lasted only a moment before he dismissed it. Weakness had cost him Melissa. Weakness had nearly cost him his professional reputation when Dominic attempted to steal his designs. He would not be weak again, regardless of the price. As Vincent drove home through the rain-slicked streets, his phone rang once more. This time, the caller ID displayed Maxwell Pike. "I thought our business was concluded," Vincent answered. "It was," Maxwell replied, his tone grave. "But something's happened you should know about. Dominic Russo was found dead in Seattle last night. Apparent suicide." Vincent's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Confirmed." "Yes. He left a note implicating Melissa in more extensive fraud than we uncovered. Police are already looking for her for questioning." The final domino had fallen. Even in death, Dominic had found a way to betray Melissa one last time. "Thank you for the information," Vincent said evenly. "Vincent," Maxwell's voice softened, "it's over. You won. Maybe it's time to. Goodbye, Maxwell." Vincent ended the call and continued driving through the dark, rain-swept night, alone with the knowledge that his revenge was now complete beyond even his original design. He should have felt triumph. Instead, there was only silence within, a void where something vital had once lived. That night, in his empty, redesigned house, Vincent poured another scotch and raised his glass to his reflection in the window. "To Severance," he whispered. "Complete and irreversible." Outside, lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the grounds of the estate for a brief, brilliant moment before plunging them back into darkness. Chapter 8. The Reckoning. 3 months after Dominic's suicide, Vincent's transformation of Thorn Security Systems was complete. The company had expanded into 2 new states, acquired a smaller competitor, and launched an innovative residential security platform that industry analysts were hailing as revolutionary. Vincent himself had become something of a business celebrity, the ruthless executive whose personal tragedy had seemingly fueled professional excellence. Financial magazines featured him with headlines like "Forged in Fire," how Vincent Thorn turned personal loss into professional gain. What these profiles failed to capture was the cost of this transformation. Vincent worked 18-hour days, maintained no personal relationships, and had developed a reputation for brutal efficiency that bordered on cruelty. Long-term employees barely recognized the man who had once led with tough but fair principles. On a brisk autumn morning, Vincent was reviewing acquisition proposals in his downtown office when Preston entered without knocking, an unprecedented breach of protocol. "Sir, there's someone here to see you." "She's very insistent." Vincent didn't look up. "I don't take unscheduled meetings. You know this." "It's Elizabeth Winters, sir. Dominic Russo's ex. She says it's urgent." This caught Vincent's attention. Elizabeth had been paid generously for her role in exposing Dominic's pattern of behavior. There was no reason for her to resurface now. Send her in. Elizabeth entered moments later, dressed in an expensive suit that spoke of her recently improved financial circumstances, courtesy of Vincent's gratitude payment for her testimony. But her expression was troubled, her elegant features tight with anxiety. This must be important to risk breaching our non-contact agreement, Vincent said, remaining seated. Elizabeth placed a USB drive on his desk. I received this in the mail yesterday. No return address, but the note with it said to deliver it to you personally. And you didn't think to send it through my attorney? After I saw what was on it, no. She met his gaze directly. It's about Melissa. Vincent felt a familiar coldness settle in his chest at the mention of his ex-wife. Following Dominic's suicide and the subsequent investigation, Melissa had disappeared. Vincent's sources indicated she had fled to Canada to avoid questioning about the expanded fraud allegations in Dominic's suicide note. What about her? She didn't do what you think she did. Elizabeth's voice was steady. The embezzlement at Westlake. She was manipulated. Just like I was. Just like Candace was. Dominic set her up to take the fall if things went south. Vincent leaned back, studying Elizabeth carefully. And you know this how? It's all on the drive. Video confessions Dominic recorded before he died. He sent copies to me, to Candace, and apparently to others involved in his schemes. Some twisted form of making amends, I suppose. Vincent made no move toward the USB. Why bring this to me? Our arrangement is concluded. Melissa's fate is no longer my concern. Elizabeth's expression hardened. Because what you did, what we helped you do, destroyed more than just Dominic. It destroyed a woman who was as much a victim as the rest of us. She stood. I've fulfilled my obligation by delivering this. What you do with it is your choice. After she left, Vincent stared at the USB drive for a long moment before finally connecting it to his computer. The contents were exactly as Elizabeth had described. Video files of Dominic, clearly recorded shortly before his death, confessing to systematically framing Melissa for his financial crimes at Westlake. She never knew about the embezzlement. Dominic's haggard face explained on the screen. I forged her signatures, used her department head credentials to authorize transfers. The emails Vincent Thorne presented at the gala were sophisticated fakes, something I learned from an old friend in digital security. Vincent watched every minute of the confessions, his expression unchanging even as the evidence mounted that his revenge against Melissa had been partially misdirected. She had betrayed their marriage. Yes, but the professional destruction he had engineered had been based on fabricated evidence. When the final video ended, Vincent sat motionless, facing an uncomfortable truth. In his determination to destroy Melissa completely, he had failed to verify the authenticity of the evidence against her. His perfect revenge had been built on a foundation that was, at least partially, false. The realization didn't bring remorse. Vincent was beyond that now. But it did trigger something adjacent to professional dissatisfaction. He had prided himself on thoroughness, on certainty. This was an oversight he wouldn't have tolerated in business. Vincent encrypted the USB contents and sent them to Harriet with instructions to verify the claims independently. Then he did something he hadn't done in months. He canceled his remaining meetings and left the office early. He drove aimlessly for hours, eventually finding himself at the Aurelia restaurant where everything had begun nearly 8 months earlier. On impulse, he went inside. Mr. Thorne. The maitre d' greeted him with surprise. We haven't seen you in some time. Table for one. Vincent nodded and was led to a quiet corner. As he sipped a scotch, memories of that night washed over him. The cake with its goodbye forever message, the overheard conversation, the moment when his world had shifted irrevocably. His phone vibrated with a text from Harriet. Preliminary analysis suggests the videos are authentic. Facial and voice recognition confirms. Digital timestamps align with period before Russo's death. We'll have full verification tomorrow. Vincent put down his phone without responding. If Dominic's confessions were genuine, it meant Melissa had been guilty of betraying their marriage, but not of professional misconduct. His revenge had been disproportionate, a realization that should have troubled him, but instead left him feeling curiously empty. As he paid his bill, the manager approached. Mr. Thorne, I hope everything was satisfactory? It was adequate, Vincent replied, then hesitated. You were working here that night. My anniversary. The manager looked uncomfortable. Yes, sir. A regrettable situation. The cake. Who ordered it? I believe it was delivered that afternoon with specific instructions. Vincent frowned. Not by my wife. No, sir. A delivery service brought it. We assumed it was arranged by Mrs. Thorne, but she seemed as surprised as anyone when it was brought out early. This new piece of information nagged at Vincent as he drove home. If Melissa hadn't ordered the cake, who had? And why had she still proceeded with the divorce announcement after appearing surprised by the cake? The questions followed him into dreams where Melissa, Dominic, and faces from his past morphed and shifted in a kaleidoscope of betrayal and manipulation. The next morning, Vincent woke with uncharacteristic purpose. Something wasn't adding up, and Vincent Thorne despised incomplete equations. He called Maxwell. I need you to investigate something. The cake at Aurelia that night. I need to know who ordered it, who paid for it, and who wrote the message. Vincent, it's been months. What? Just do it, Vincent interrupted, then hung up. Over the next week, as he maintained his normal business operations, Vincent found himself pursuing this new investigation with the same methodical precision he'd applied to his revenge. Piece by piece, a disturbing picture emerged. The cake had been ordered by phone, paid for with a prepaid credit card purchased with cash. The bakery had been instructed to write, "Goodbye forever," based on what they were told was an inside joke about a couple renewing their vows after a near divorce. More troublingly, Harriet's full verification confirmed that Dominic's confessions were genuine. Melissa had indeed been framed for the embezzlement, though her affair with Dominic and her planned divorce announcement remained uncontested facts. Vincent was processing these revelations in his office when Preston entered with an envelope. This was hand-delivered for you, sir. The messenger insisted it was urgent. Inside was a single sheet of expensive stationery with an elegant handwritten note. The full story awaits. Riverdale Park, North Entrance, 8 p.m. tonight. Come alone if you want to understand what really happened that night. CF. The initials meant nothing to Vincent, but the promise of answers drew him like a magnet. At precisely 8 p.m., he parked near the specified entrance and walked into the dimly lit park. A figure sat on a bench beneath an ornate lamppost, a woman in her early 50s, elegantly dressed, with silver-streaked dark hair. As Vincent approached, she smiled without warmth. Vincent Thorne. Finally we meet. Vincent remained standing. You have me at a disadvantage. Clarissa Fontaine, she replied. Dominic Russo was my son. Chapter 9. Severance complete. Vincent felt a cold wave of recognition wash over him. Clarissa Fontaine. The name had appeared in his investigation of Dominic's background, but only as a distant figure who had disowned her son years earlier over his gambling debts and manipulative behavior. Please sit, Clarissa said, gesturing to the bench beside her. What I have to say will take some time. Vincent remained standing. Why reveal yourself now? Why not during the events of the past year? Because I needed to see how far you would go. Her voice held no accusation, only clinical interest. I needed to understand what kind of man destroyed my son. Your son destroyed himself, Vincent replied evenly. His manipulations, his affairs, his debts. Yes, Clarissa interrupted. Dominic was deeply flawed, perhaps beyond redemption. But he didn't target your wife randomly, Mr. Thorne. Nothing about what happened to you was random. Vincent finally sat, maintaining distance between them. Explain. Clarissa opened an elegant leather portfolio and removed a photograph, an old corporate headshot of Vincent from at least 15 years earlier, standing beside an older man Vincent recognized immediately. My late husband, Gregory Fontaine, Clarissa said, watching Vincent's reaction. You knew him as Greg Franklin, regional manager at TriStar Securities. Your first employer out of college. Vincent's mind raced back to his early career. His mentor Greg, who had given him his start in the security industry, who had championed Vincent's ideas until the day Vincent had discovered Greg stealing from the company. Vincent had reported him, testified against him. Greg had been sentenced to 5 years for embezzlement. Gregory died in prison. Clarissa continued, her voice tight with old pain. A heart attack in his 3rd year. Dominic was only 19, his sister Natalie just 16. Our comfortable life collapsed overnight. Your husband was a thief, Vincent said flatly. His choices caused his downfall, not mine. Perhaps. But you were so eager, weren't you? The ambitious young protege, so quick to step into his position after he was gone. Clarissa's smile was razor-sharp. Did you ever wonder why he took that money? Did anyone at TriStar mention that Gregory had been promised a percentage of profits from the security system he helped you develop, a promise that was conveniently forgotten when the system became successful? Vincent's expression remained impassive, though internally he was reassessing long-buried history. Greg had indeed helped refine Vincent's early security concepts, had fought for resources to develop them. The embezzlement had come after management had restructured compensation, eliminating the profit-sharing Greg had been counting on. So this was about revenge, Vincent said. Dominic targeting my wife, the anniversary sabotage, all planned by you. Not initially, Clarissa admitted. Dominic didn't know your connection to our family when he first met Melissa. That was genuine coincidence. But when he mentioned her surname, I recognized it immediately. I'd followed your career for years, watched you build your empire while we struggled to rebuild our lives. She closed the portfolio. Once I realized the connection, yes, I encouraged Dominic to pursue Melissa more seriously. I helped craft the narrative that appealed to her artistic sensibilities, her unfulfilled creative ambitions. The divorce announcement at your anniversary, however, that was my special touch. Poetic, don't you think? Destruction dressed as celebration. The cake, Vincent said softly. Indeed, a detail I knew would cut deeper than the divorce itself. I wanted you to feel the same public humiliation Gregory felt. Clarissa studied him. What I didn't anticipate was the thoroughness of your response. You didn't just divorce Melissa. You systematically dismantled both their lives. And now Dominic is dead, Vincent stated flatly. Yes, my son, for all his faults, wasn't prepared for the level of destruction you unleashed. The gambling debts you purchased and called due, the professional ruin, the public exposure, it broke him. His suicide note was addressed to me, you know? His last words were an apology for failing to complete what we started. The night air had grown cooler, but Vincent barely noticed. The full scope of manipulation, spanning years, crossing generations, was becoming clear. Why tell me this now, he asked. Why not let me continue believing the narrative I constructed? Clarissa's eyes hardened. Because I want you to know that while you may have won this battle, the war was never what you thought it was. I want you to understand that your perfect life was dismantled not by random misfortune, but by deliberate design. Most of all, I want you to live with the knowledge that your ruthless response claimed more than just my son's career. It claimed his life. She stood, gathering her belongings. Melissa was collateral damage, a pawn in a game between our families she never knew existed. Your vendetta against her based on falsified evidence of embezzlement was excessive. But that's who you are now, isn't it? The man who destroys completely, who never forgives. Vincent remained seated as Clarissa prepared to leave. You've made a critical error in revealing yourself, he said quietly. You've just admitted to orchestrating fraud, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and arguably contributing to your son's suicide through your manipulation. Clarissa's smile was cold. Prove it. Your recording devices won't have captured this conversation. I swept for them before you arrived. Any legal action would require you to admit how thoroughly you were manipulated, how completely you failed to verify evidence before destroying an innocent woman's professional reputation. Your carefully reconstructed image would crumble. She began walking away, then turned back. Besides, what would be the point? Dominic is gone. Your marriage is over. Melissa has disappeared to rebuild her life far from here. The damage is complete on all sides. With that, Clarissa Fontaine vanished into the darkness of the park, leaving Vincent alone with revelations that should have shaken him to his core. Instead, as he walked back to his car, Vincent felt a strange clarity. The revenge he had executed had been based on incomplete information, yet its effectiveness was undeniable. He had been manipulated into a position of vulnerability, yet his response had ultimately resulted in total victory, albeit at costs he hadn't anticipated. Over the following weeks, Vincent directed Maxwell to verify Clarissa's claims. Each piece of her story checked out. Gregory Fontaine had indeed been Vincent's early mentor. The profit-sharing agreement had existed and been eliminated in a corporate restructuring. Dominic was Gregory's son, though he had later changed his surname to his maternal grandmother's name, Rousseau, after his father's conviction. The scope of the deception was breathtaking. A revenge plot years in the making, designed to use Vincent's own wife as the instrument of his downfall. And yet, in the end, it had failed. Vincent had not only survived but emerged stronger, at least professionally. What had been lost was something less tangible, but perhaps more valuable: his capacity for trust, for forgiveness, for human connection. 6 months after the meeting with Clarissa, Vincent sat in his newly constructed penthouse office overlooking the city. Thorn Security Systems had just completed its most successful quarter ever. The business press now regularly referred to him as the Machine, a nickname that acknowledged both his company's precision and his emotionless leadership style. Preston entered with the day's schedule. "Sir, the board is assembled for the quarterly meeting. Also, there's been another inquiry from that reporter about your personal journey since the divorce. Decline the interview." Again, Vincent didn't look up from his tablet. "Has legal completed the acquisition paperwork for Meridian Construction?" "Yes, sir. Once signed, we'll own controlling interest." Preston hesitated. "The Meridian CEO has requested a personal meeting to discuss retention of key personnel." "Unnecessary. The transition team has identified which employees meet our standards. The rest will be severed." The word hung in the air between them: severance. Once a simple business term, it had taken on new meaning in Vincent's vocabulary. To sever, to cut completely, to terminate without possibility of reconnection. "Very good, sir." Preston turned to leave, then stopped. "There's one more thing. A letter arrived for you this morning. No return address, but the handwriting." Vincent looked up to see Preston holding an envelope. "The handwriting. It appears to be Mrs. Thorne's, Miss Foster's now, I should say." Vincent stared at the envelope, momentarily transported back to a time when Melissa's handwritten notes had been common. Thoughtful messages left on his pillow, in his briefcase, reminders of a connection he had once valued above all else. "Leave it," he said finally. After Preston departed, Vincent continued working for nearly an hour before finally reaching for the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a brief message in Melissa's distinctive handwriting. "Vincent, I've learned the truth about Dominic, about Clarissa, about the setup that destroyed us both. I don't expect forgiveness. I betrayed our marriage regardless of the larger manipulation at play. But I wanted you to know that I've found a kind of peace in starting over. I hope someday you might find the same. Goodbye in earnest this time, M." There was a postscript. "I've returned to teaching art to underprivileged children, the work that brought us together in the first place. Some patterns, it seems, are worth repeating." Vincent read the letter twice, then methodically tore it into precise squares before dropping them into the shredder beside his desk. There would be no response, no acknowledgement. Melissa Foster, formerly Thorne, had been severed from his life as completely as if she had never existed. Later that evening, as Vincent drove home to his empty mansion, he passed a small gallery with a brightly lit opening in progress. Through the windows, he glimpsed laughing people, artwork, a community celebrating creation rather than destruction. For the briefest moment, he felt an echo of something once familiar, a pull toward human connection, toward the possibility of something beyond the cold efficiency that now defined his existence. The moment passed. Vincent Thorne, the man who never forgave, continued driving into the gathering darkness, alone by choice and circumstance, severed from his former self as completely as he had severed all connections to those who had betrayed him. Behind him, the gallery lights continued to shine, illuminating a different kind of life, one he had chosen to leave behind forever. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.